Continue the reading of Alpha Goldberg's 9/11 Pentagon book, Chapter 7, FBI and the Crime Scene. The vanguard of federal government responders racing to support the rescue, firefighting, and security operations at the Pentagon. FBI Special Agent Christopher Combs had taken action in accordance with the Federal Response Plan first issued in 1992. Shortly after the attack, the Federal Emergency Management Agency activated the plan. Designed to bring together 28 federal departments and agencies and the American Red Cross to aid state and local governments in coping with presidentially declared disasters and emergencies. The plan identified lead federal agencies to perform 12 emergency support functions, such as conducting search and rescue operations, handling and disposing of hazardous material, and providing health and medical services. In 1995, President Bill Clinton issued Presidential Decision Directive 39, United States Policy on Counterterrorism, and in 1997, an annex based on PDD 39 was added to the Federal Response Plan, expanding the plan's scope to include acts of terrorism. As the lead federal agency responsible for dealing with terrorism within the United States, the Department of Justice had delegated operational responsibility to the FBI, responsible for crisis management, primarily law enforcement functions. The FBI was charged to anticipate, thwart, respond to, and resolve terrorist incidents. FEMA, as lead agency for consequence management, is charged with coordinating federal efforts to protect public health and safety, restore government services, and provide government emergency relief. In January 2001, the FBI and FEMA issued the United States Government Interagency Domestic Terrorism Concept of Operations Plan, affirming FEMA's lead role in consequence management and the FBI's in crisis management. On his arrival about 9:50 a.m., Combs reported to Schwartz and asked how the FBI could support him. Schwartz told Combs, who was well known to him, that he wanted intelligence about the attack. The agent had secured radio contact with the FBI's Washington field office at Judiciary Square in Washington, which had direct lines to the Strategic Information Operations Center at FBI headquarters on Pennsylvania Avenue. He passed to Schwartz reports from the field office and warned him shortly before 10:15 a.m. that the fourth hijacked airliner was on a direct flight path to Washington. When the airliner thwart vanished after the 20-minute countdown, Combs received and relayed the all-clear report from the field office. FBI agents arriving at the Pentagon reported to Combs, who initially exercised FBI command and control on scene. Later in the afternoon, a assistant special agent in charge, Robert Blecksmith, took over on-scene command, and on September 13th, Special Agent in charge Arthur Eberhard assumed the responsibility. Now, the FBI was in charge of collecting physical evidence of the crime, since the crime was air piracy, hijacking, the collection of human remains, identification of human remains through the Dover mortuary, as well as finding the personal effects of people on the plane and the hijackers. Excuse me. To establish for the record the cause of the explosion and fire, the FBI conducted interviews with eyewitnesses and learned that a commercial aircraft had hit the building, dispelling early suspicions and reports that a truck bomb or small commuter plane had caused the damage. Seeking to collect visual evidence, an FBI agent asked for assistance with two combat photographs. Photographers, Marine Corporal Jason Ingersoll and Navy Petty Officer Kevin Rimrod, who took photographs of the damaged building, the debris field, the path of the plane, and also crowds of people who gathered to watch, among whom it was thought there might be terrorists. When another hijacked airliner was thought to be on its way, the agent asked Ingersoll and Rimrod to stand where they could photograph the incoming aircraft if it smashed into the building. Photographers watched as everyone fled, leaving them behind at an exposed site to wait for the next catastrophic strike. The all-clear signal brought them a special relief. Other photographers boarded helicopters to take aerial shots of the Pentagon. As the fire raged, FBI agents identified grid zones and formed a line of Arlington police officers, military personnel, and others to walk shoulder to shoulder on the west side lawn to search for remnants of the airliner. Keeping clear of rescue and firefighting efforts, agents then identified, photographed, removed, and bagged pieces of the airplane and personal effects. Although much of the plane disintegrated within the Pentagon, the search found many scraps and a few personal items widely scattered on the grass and heliport. Plane remnants varied from half-dollar size to a few feet long. Anxious to hunt for investigative leads, the FBI scoured the debris field as soon as possible to prevent souvenir seekers from helping themselves, fire trucks from running over, crushing, and destroying evidence. That morning and afternoon and the next day, they conducted line sweeps, systematically searching through the debris, finding the larger plane debris to the north of the impact point. Seeking assumed security for the Pentagon area, Combs met briefly with Jester in South Parking and again at the Incident Command Post under the I-935 overpass. Both worried that terrorists would again hit the Pentagon and agreed that members of the DPS SWAT team should protect the command post. To conduct entrance to the area, Arlington County fire officers augmented the FBI and DPS by guarding the perimeter of the reservation along Route 27, now closed to all but emergency vehicles. Arlington Battalion Chief Randy Gray, on the west side of the edifice, remembered, "When I got my assignment, I looked up and there were these guys with guns all around. I felt they had my back. It was important to know that our back was covered so I could concentrate on my job." Fire Chief Plower directed the Arlington County Emergency Operations Center to obtain 2,000 feet of chain link fence for access control, and a contractor began installation that day. Not only concerned about the terrorists might have carried chemicals or biological agents on Flight 77, since the plane crash was an ineffective delivery mode for toxic substances, Holmes and Schwartz nonetheless wanted additional air testing at the site to detect chemical, biological, and radiological weapons of mass destruction. The county's Emergency Operations Center asked FEMA to arrange for the Department of Health and Human Services to deploy the National Medical Response Team to conduct tests for poisons possibly released by the hijackers. Based in management by Arlington County, the NMRT's 36 members lived and worked in the region. Team members arrived at the site within hours. After tests proved negative, the team focused on setting up and operating a decontamination tent to wash down workers in their protective clothing as they left the Pentagon after shoring up columns, clearing paths through rubble, and locating and removing human remains. Inside the building late that night and around the clock afterwards, Special Agent John Adams and Thomas O'Connor led teams recording locations of human remains and numbering, tagging, and photographing them. Aircraft parts were placed in a pile on the lawn and then in a steel container or a tent for examination and disposal by National Transportation Safety Board officials. When loads of debris were trucked to North Parking for more detailed sifting, the FBI took custody of recovered items deemed to be as the evidence. DPS provided initial safekeeping for classified documents and disks. The air-class flight data and cockpit voice recorders, so-called black boxes, were found September 14th about 4 a.m. in the Pentagon near the hole in the inner ring wall. They were actually found by Thomas Berghammer and somebody else, and one from I think the Fort Myer Fire Department. The FBI transferred custody of the canisters to the NTSB for analysis. Both recorders have been installed in the rear of the aircraft beneath the tail. Badly damaged voice recorder yielded no information, but the flight recorder provided data about altitude, speed, and headings. For command operations, the FBI stationed its mobile command post near the heliport. At 6 a.m. on September 12th, it established a joint operations center at the Fort Myer Community Center in accordance with federal plans requiring that a terrorist incident, the FBI set up a JOC to include federal, state, and local officials with crisis management and consequence management responsibilities. Such quick action was possible because months earlier, the agency had surveyed regional sites and selected Fort Myer as a JOC location to coordinate the law enforcement response to expected disruptive and violent protests during World Bank and International Monetary Fund meetings scheduled for Washington later in September. 26 government organizations sent representatives to the JOC, commanded by Special Agent in Charge Timothy Breezaney. To assist the FBI with its evidence search, DPS and contractors gave agents videos from 2 cameras positioned north of the crash site. The recently installed digital cameras were still undergoing testing as part of a security system enabling a guard in a protective boot to identify drivers in cars heading toward the parking lot for the Pentagon Mall entrance and to raise turnstile arms permitting entry. Cameras captured images of the west facade bursting into a huge fireball as Flight 77 crashed. An image a second before the explosion showed an indistinct view of the plane at nearby ground level heading toward the building. The FBI investigation involved far more than the Pentagon. On the morning of the crash, agents raced to Dulles Airport in Virginia, where American Airlines Flight 77 had originated, to collect evidence and interview ticket agents, security personnel, baggage and food handlers, and others. At its peak, the global investigation involved 7,000 agents, making it the largest and most complex investigation in the Bureau's history. The FBI named its overall investigation on September 11 attacks PENTBOMB, an acronym for Pentagon Twin Towers Bombing. And that's the end of this chapter. Thank you for tuning in, staying interested, and see you in the next video.